We're here to learn about purpose of statement questions, what they are and how to handle them. First, let's look at where they appear. You're going to see purpose of statement questions in logical reasoning. Between the two logical reasoning sections, you'll see maybe none, maybe no questions at all, and maybe up to about 3 total. But with 0 to 3 questions between the two sections, this is not exactly the most important question type that you'll see on the LSAT. However, a couple points is better than not getting those points, but more importantly, the skills that you need to succeed with these questions, you'll also need for other question types. So the skills that you'll build will get you 0 to 3 points, but then also help you with some other questions as well. So let's see what they look like. Purpose of statement questions often take one of these two forms. Which one of the following describes the function served in the argument by the statement that something? So it's going to have some kind of function. Or the statement something plays which one of the following roles in the passage. So when you're talking about identifying the function or role of a statement, then you know that you're dealing with this question type. And now let's look at how to handle them. When you hit an identifying purpose of statement question, you want to paraphrase the argument, put it into your own words. When you break down that argument, break it down into its evidence and its conclusion. And when you do that, think about where does the statement fit in? Where does it fit into the argument? Put yourself in the author's shoes and see how it helps that argument along. And typically, the role of the statement is going to be one of these, one of the common parts of an argument. The role of it could be the conclusion. The statement that you have to evaluate could be the conclusion of the argument, or it could be an intermediate conclusion, a conclusion reached along the way to the main conclusion. That statement could also be evidence, or it could be a counterexample. These are some common roles that the statements can play. Now let's look at an example. So suppose you hit a question stem that says, which one of the following most accurately describes the role played in the statement by, and now this is the thing that we're going to need to evaluate, the supposition that eating meat is essential to good health. So this is the statement that we have to figure out the role of. Now let's look at the argument. Some vegetarians have argued that there are 2 individually sufficient reasons for not eating meat. One based on health considerations, and the other based on the aversion to living at the expense of other conscious creatures. But suppose, and this is what we're supposed to evaluate, suppose that eating meat were essential to good health for humans. Then it would be less clear that an aversion to living at the expense of other conscious creatures is enough of a reason to stop eating meat. Okay, so some vegetarians say that there are 2 different reasons. But if we took away one of them, if we took away the health reason, then this author says that this argument wouldn't be so clear. It wouldn't be so clear that the aversion standing by itself would be enough of a reason. So looking at it again, the conclusion is that concern over killing, that's the second consideration, may not be enough to make one go vegetarian. And the evidence for that is that while vegetarians argue that there are 2 reasons for not eating meat, if you did suppose that the health concern dropped out, then you'd have only 1 left, and that doesn't seem that compelling to the author. So if you know basically what this supposition is doing, it's pointing out that 1 reason may not be enough, then you can zero in on the correct answer. And you can take a look at it here, or you can watch us knock it out ourselves. So, if you know that it's undermining that 2 independent argument claim, then you can zero in on D. It is used to weaken the claim that the consciousness of animals is a sufficient reason for not eating meat. And that is the role that it plays, because the author is saying that if you took away the health concern and left only the aversion issue, then that wouldn't be strong enough. So it is used to weaken the argument in that way. Now, if you had a good sense of that argument coming in, you could zero in on D. But even if you didn't have that strong a grip on it, you could still eliminate the wrong choices with just a little bit of information about what the author is doing, if you know which way that they're going. For example, it is used to disprove the vegetarian position that we should not eat meat. That's too extreme. The author says it's not clear that the aversion issue is enough. So really, the author is just saying that 1 reason may not be enough to make people go veggie. It's A goes too far in that direction. Similarly, It is used to disprove the claim that a vegetarian diet is healthy. Well, first of all, that's a circular argument at best, but the author's claim is much more limited. The author is just saying that one argument isn't enough. The aversion argument isn't enough. So C is too extreme. And similarly, E, it is used to show that there is no sufficient reason for not eating meat, goes too far. I mean, for all we know, the health reason might be good enough. This author is just saying that the aversion argument is not strong enough. So 3 of the choices are too extreme, and the other one goes in the wrong direction. B, it is used to show that the 2 types of reasons cited in favor of vegetarian are independent. Now, if that were true, that would be the exact opposite of what the author says, so B goes in the complete wrong direction. And those are typical ways that wrong answers work in these type of questions. You'll see some that twist the conclusion, distort it, and you'll see some that go in the opposite direction. Let's look at a different example. Which one of the following most accurately describes the role played in the passage by the point that capitalism and industrialization are distinct? So the thing that we have to evaluate is the point that capitalism and industrialization are distinct. Now let's look at the argument. Some people argue that capital punishment for theft was an essential part of the labor discipline of British capitalism. So some people think that capital punishment was essential. Critics of such a view, okay, now we have the second point of view. Some people think it was essential. The critics of such a view argue that more people were executed for theft in pre-industrial England than were executed in England after industrialization. So that's their criticism. So what does the author think? The next sentence tells us. But such a criticism overlooks the fact that industrialization and capitalism are 2 very different social phenomena. And that is the statement whose role that we have to evaluate. Some people think something, those people have critics, but the criticism overlooks the role of the statement that we need to evaluate, and that the latter predated the former by several centuries. So let's break this down. The criticism in the argument overlooks the fact that capitalism and industrialization are different. All right, and that is what we have to evaluate. And what we got before that were 2 separate points of view in the evidence. Some people claim that capital punishment was essential, and the critics point out this evidence about executions. But the fact that capitalism and industrialization are different is cited against the criticism and more in support of the original some people point of view. If that's all you know, you could zero in on the correct answer. You can take a shot at it here or watch us do our work. E should jump out because the role of the statement about the difference here is an attempt to undermine the criticism, remember, overlooks the criticism cited against the claim that capital punishment was essential. So if you know that the statement here about the role of about the industrialization and capitalism being different, if that's all you knew, and you knew that it was going to support the some people argument, then you could zero in on E, because that's the only one that goes in that direction in the right way. And let's look at the others. A, it is cited as some evidence against the claim that capital punishment was essential. Well, that goes in the wrong direction. That's more of the criticism point of view. It is cited as a direct contradiction of the claim that capital punishment was essential. Well, that too is the critic's point of view. And D, it is cited as a fact supporting the critics of the view. It doesn't support the critics, so again we have this backwards, that capital punishment was essential. C is another typical wrong answer type. It is an attempt to conclusively prove the claim that capital punishment was essential, which goes in the right direction, but it goes too far. So in this case, we had 3 that went in the wrong direction and 1 C that's too extreme. In the previous one, we had 3 that were too extreme, 1 that went in the right direction. This is very, very common. You'll see both kinds of wrong answer types as you hit purpose of statement questions. Again, these are not going to be the biggest part of your LSAT success story, but if you do well here, you get a few points, and then you can use these skills when you need to identify the role of statements for more complicated question types.